Black Panther Wakanda Forever was a fantastic tribute to Chadwick Boseman. And it brings in and spotlights new characters for the film, as well as making you think, was everything in there needed? Now, I absolutely love this film and definitely recommend you going out and seeing it. These films, both Black Panther and Black Panther Wakanda Forever, kind of work as standalones in the MCU. So you don't really need to watch much or understand it. And it's kind of crazy to think how big the MCU has come thus far. And the reason I'm bringing this up right now is because Wakanda Forever has a lot of plot points in it. Three extra subplot points that I think extend the film to up to the 2 hour and 40 minute mark that it's at. Now, this film does bring a lot of emotional value, and I do believe that these plot points are put in there naturally and they work well and create conflict and also bring the rising action to where it needs to go. However, they kind of fizzle out towards the third act because the MCU is setting up for other films, TV shows, and things like that, and trying to get you to attach to these characters right off the beginning. Now, someone who is introduced like that is Ironheart, a new character who's going to be getting their new TV show. And unlike America Chavez in the Doctor Strange film, she's definitely more plot driven and, well, she has the same amount of plot driven, but you connect to her more. You understand her more, and she feels more human. And really, every time she's on screen, it's fun to watch, and you kind of grow attached to her as the film goes on. So I was worried about her, but I was mainly worried about Namor. And seeing as well as they did with her, it is great to see that Namor is given justice. Now, Namor is old. I mean, he is before Aquaman. He's just a year younger than Superman. And he's never really gotten the spotlight or the attention that Aquaman has gotten. So it was interesting to see what they would do with him. And I think they captured his motivation and his personality really well. I mean, they redid him. And DC with Jason Momoa kind of took that edgy vibe that Namor has always had in the comic books. But I'm really, really good with the revamp that they got here, and they really captured his character well. He's someone that's interests has always conflicted with other people's, but it's not something that you could always argue against. And it works great in this film. Taking center stage is Shuri, who is now a protagonist, and she has great, powerful moments. And I would argue that they're not as powerful as some of the supporting cast. However, that is mainly because she now has to become a vessel for the audience. And they do a really good job at handing the baton or passing the torch over to her and allowing her to take center stage and being the new protagonist for this series that works out well. Her major conflict is an inner struggle, not so much an antagonizing force like Namor, and I did enjoy that. Matter of fact, this film brings a lot of traditional tropes, but twists them in a very unique and subtle way that I don't think a lot of people would catch just sitting there watching it. Now, they do, there's some things like the major plot points or even the third act where it's very obvious how they flip the script, and for the better. Matter of fact, everything about this film looks great. The CGI is well done, especially the city that Namor is from, the Atlantis-like city, in my opinion, is reimagined in a better way than Atlantis was in the DC. Now, as much as I enjoyed, I know I'm comparing Namor a lot to Aquaman. I really did enjoy Aquaman, but they are two very similar heroes, and I think it fits, the city fits well, mainly because it's just a lot like Wakanda, and they made it feel grounded and as if this could have existed in our world today. And the costume design, I've always enjoyed the costume design. The CGI really has to flex in many scenes, so it works really well. The choreographing is good, but I think the editing hurts it. There are times where it goes really fast paced, and the scenes can kind of just be a blur. You don't really know what happens, but they're far and few in between. Overall, the film works really well. Now, I'm going to go into spoilers now so I can talk more about the nitty gritty. So if you haven't seen the film, I definitely recommend it, and I liked it. But for those of you that have seen the film, these are kind of maybe my gripes and concerns, but the things that I really, really loved as well. Going back into the plot points, spoilers now, we had things that are being set up for the Thunderbolts, things that are being set up for Ironheart, and things being set up for what was the Okoye. Okoye, she has the bodyguards for the Black Panther. I think they're getting their own show or something like that. And whereas, again, they were kind of central to the plot, and I see some people talking about it, and I kind of felt this way myself. It does seem like you could take them out and shorten the runtime, because the movie did feel long. It felt long. It felt like I was there for a while, and that's not always a bad thing. But I do think it is something that did hurt the film. I think the film didn't need to be as necessarily long as it was, but the moments that were captured through these side plots did function in a cohesive manner through the overall film. I mean, the whole point with Ironheart, I really should look at these characters' names. I'm gonna do more homework next time I do this, so I can actually reference the actors and characters. But I think Ironheart overall is the way we're looking at it. She starts the whole conflict overall, and whereas people might, I kind of disagree with where some people might think that she wasn't needed in the film, because to me it shows she kind of represents hope. She's kind of the protecting factor. She's kind of the whole thing that starts off the feud between Namor and Wakanda. And really, she doesn't do it on purpose. She does it on accident. And I think she's needed because she represents two things. She represents hope, and she represents Namor's resolve. I want to talk about her specifically because I really do think she's crucial to the film. They go out of their way to mention that she's a kid. So, she's 19, and Namor and the way that he looks to solve problems is very similar to how he does it in the comic books. He's like, look, she created something that made it to where they can find my civilization. She has to die. Whereas the Wakandans were like, look, we'll protect her, we'll teach her, we'll show her a new way, because they're trying to carry on T'Challa's legacy, right? Where he opened up to the world and he's trying to share his information. Now, of course, at the beginning of the film, it doesn't feel like that, because they're all complaining. Why, they're sharing their technology, they're sharing their advances, but they're not sharing their vibranium. And that's the kicker. That's the big thing. And it's specifically just their raw resources, because they're worried about what people would do with vibranium, the weapons that they can create from it, because it can be very detrimental to society as a whole. So they're trying to push forward T'Challa's legacy, and we're gonna teach her. We're gonna make sure she's helped. And she didn't even realize she was doing it. She was just doing it to prove that she could do it, not so much to actually go and find vibranium somewhere else in the world for the government reasons. And so I think that she definitely represents something for two of the characters that drive the plot. Whereas Namor acts as an antagonizing force, I don't necessarily ever saw him as an antagonist for Shuri. And I think the film really was trying to push that and portray that for us, because the two of them create this really strong kind of connection early on, where they have an understanding of one another, and they're both just trying to be there for their people. But you can kind of see the remnants of the movie that they had beforehand, because it feels like they're trying to compare leadership, but Shuri doesn't really have any experience being a leader. And they lean into that. They lean into her inexperience, and kind of she naturally wants to be more selfish and take revenge for the things that she's lost. She has a lot of hatred. She is mad at the world because it seems unfair that T'Challa is now passed away. And she wants to burn it. And I really, really think this was like the perfect way. I don't know if there was any other way that they could have handled that, because her antagonist is with herself, right? And Namor doesn't represent Namor is not an external representation of that internal conflict, like what they do in every superhero film. Take Iron Man, the first one, for example, right? This is basically every enemy is what the hero could have been, which is why it's become a trope that they're a like a knockoff of the other. Not a knockoff, I'm sorry. It's like a mirror match of the other person. So I think that they handled her very well. And I do think that Ironheart was something that needed to stay. Now, with Okoye's plot line and her, kind of like losing her rank and losing everything and giving us a really emotional and powerful performance, it feels like it doesn't really go anywhere in the third act. And again, they're getting their own show, and I didn't see any resolve there. And I think this is where the film Wakanda Forever is at its weakest. Is it takes these other characters, like I think Valentine is in here as well. If you saw the Hawkeye TV show, she was in that. If you saw the ending of Captain America and Winter Soldier, she was in that. So it almost feels like it's like, oh, there's the person. Oh, there's the person. Oh, there. No, she said the thing. And so and that's, to me, is very kind of like, okay, like, but was it needed? Did it serve the story? Because yeah, she represents the outside forces that are closing in on Wakanda, right? And she represents kind of like the rest of the world. And so I that's why, in my opinion, they feel good. I think Okoye is the only one that didn't feel resolved, because it was an inner conflict that we didn't get to see pushed out, right? Maybe she got to redeem herself by becoming by fighting someone, but she used technology to do it, and it just Okoye's side plot felt the weakest to me, and that's where the film felt the weakest. But she wasn't shown a lot of, and which was another thing, is like they kept on showing off her and other people that were part of her story, but they never really got in the nitty gritty of it. Whereas Valentine probably got the least amount of screen time, but she represented an external force, and gave the audience an idea of the pressure. The walls are closing in on Wakanda. So overall, I think the character driven story worked for the overall plot, and again, first and foremost, this was definitely a tribute to Chadwick Boseman, which was, it's heavy. This movie's very heavy and emotional. It's not as lighthearted as Black Panther. It's you go into it kind of expecting that, and you come out of it feeling it. So I think they did a good job with that, and the nuances that I was talking about before, specifically with the ending. There's a lot of these things here. First, I already kind of mentioned it with Shuri's inner conflict and turmoil that she has to deal with, but specifically with the big fight between Namor and Shuri, and the new Black Panther Shuri. It's no longer a fight of I must overcome you, because they're cutting to the Wakandans fighting the Namor's people, because I can't remember their names. I feel so bad. I want to say Atlanteans, but they're not called that. And they're losing. And Namor said, he goes, I have more people than there are blades of grass in your country, which is insane, right? Like, he confidently, he's like, I'm going to keep it real with you. Like, you don't got the numbers. And they go, and you see that if she continues down the path that she's taking, she's going to fail her people. She needs to not be selfish. She needs to, and what's really cool is that she went to war because of her selfishness, because of her hatred, because of her anger. She let that control her. Whereas Namor was doing everything that he had to do to help his people survive. Every decision that he made was calculated, right? Like, he makes a deal at the very beginning of the film in the first act, saying, "Hey, I need this person. I want them brought to me so we can take care of them, execute them, and that you guys can't find our hidden city." But he's not gonna let strangers find this person on the surface world and then trust that they're gonna take the word for it. And he's right for not trusting them, because the second they find Ironheart, they're like, "Yo, we can't give her to Namor." and he intercepts them when they're most vulnerable. And that's smart. That's like, honestly, it's smart that he does that. It's he's thinking ahead. He's thinking of his people, and he doesn't care about the relationship because in his mind he's serving one goal. And I think that's fantastic. And it goes as far as whenever he retaliates, right? They snuck into his palace. They killed his people. And so he comes back and he goes, "Don't mess with me." Right? This is what happens if you mess with me. And he's showing a sign of power. He's not backing down. Again, something that you can feel. And that to me was the most important part of the film, is that like the action scenes in this film have weight behind them. You felt like everyone was there for a reason. There was purpose. It was purpose-driven action. The action, actions speak louder than words, right? So the action spoke when the characters shouldn't. And I think that's how action films should go. Unfortunately, the MCU doesn't really do it that much like that often. So it is fantastically done. All the action scenes have meaning and do a great purpose in propelling the story forward. As for the ending, which I think was really important, which I was preluding to, was Shuri and Namor are fighting not against each other, but for their... Well, Namor's fighting for his people. Shuri's fighting for herself. And if Shuri continues to fight for herself, she's going to lose her people. And so she has to choose. She has to give up the hatred, her inner turmoil. She meets, and I think was really big and kind of a huge confirmation for everyone, is that she goes out and she meets Killmonger in the ancestral plane. Because she's, in the beginning of the show, she doesn't believe in the ancestral plane. She doesn't believe in any of it. And to show that she probably meets the worst person that she could meet in there goes to show how far she's gone. How deep, how far gone she's gone. And you don't really want neither of them to lose. And for them to add that twist at the ending, I think was great. It's fantastic. Of course, if you keep up with this stuff, Namor's not going to die, right? But honestly, this film was good. Besides some of its flaws in the MCU trying to set up things, personally, I'm used to that kind of stuff. I read comic books. I think it's fine. But I know everybody isn't as used to it as me, right? Like, a lot of people don't watch every Marvel show, movie that comes out. They don't keep up with that kind of stuff. So I don't think it really serves, or I can see how it leaves a bad taste in someone's mouth when they're trying to advertise other things to you. But it's not like how in Batman v Superman, where they just put absolute trailers in the middle of the movie. So it's there, it fits, and I don't think it's as distracting as it could have been. Whereas some subplots fall, other things rise. So Black Panther for me was definitely, I'm going to go out and say like a 9 out of 10. Recommend it. Go check it out. Wakanda Forever. Tell me your thoughts below. Were there some things distracting? Were there things that you didn't like? Are you excited for some of the new stuff coming out? Until next time, play nice.